Okay, so now we're going to talk about that good old American corruption rooted right here in New York City. I want you to give it up for Andrea Fondulis. Woo! And she is further back in the room, so we're going to keep clapping until she's on the stage. We love the energy.
And now I had to wear the shoes again.
Forgot to slip Jackie a 10.
I did forget.
For the corruption.
I got it.
It's funnier when you explain it.
All right. How are we doing, everyone? Kind of impossible to go after all of these amazing acts. But my name is Andrea, and half of you already know this about me, but I love democracy. I love elections, I love politics, I love voting, and I love Taylor Swift. Although, I don't really think that one's relevant right now.
Yeah.
But
You'll figure it out.
But Tammany Hall embodies almost all of these things. And so I have this weird obsession with just the grand and unprecedented levels of their corruption. And well, they're humbug. So,
Humbug.
Humbug.
all right. So, Jackie gave us the definition of humbug earlier, but I want to revisit it because I want you to keep it in mind as we go through this talk. It's deceptive or false talk or behavior. And to me, this perfectly bleeds into who Tammany Hall was at their core. And so, a quick refresher of who Tammany Hall was. They were just a political organization, and they started out innocuous enough. Early in the 1700s, it was just this group of dudes who wanted to talk politics, hang out, smoke cigars, and wear cool hats. Hats. And so in the 1800s, when droves of immigrants were coming into the United States to live out the great American promise, Tammany Hall welcomed them with open arms and helped them acclimate to the city by helping them get jobs or become United States citizens. And I feel one of the biggest responsibilities of being a United States citizen is expressing our voice in the great American experiment of representative democracy. Woo! Yeah, democracy! But so Tammany, these selfless virtuosos they were, they understood this connection between voting and citizenship. And so they ultimately wielded these immigrants into a powerful voting bloc that would engender the gears of their political machine. As one of the main Tammany bosses said, and I want you to call out if you hear any humbug here, think of the hundreds of foreigners dumped into our city. There is not a, new word, mugwump who would shake hands with them. Tammany looks after them for the sake of their vote, grafts them on the Republic, and makes U.S. citizens out of them.
Humbug.
You may not like our motives or methods, but if we go down into the gutter, it is because there are men down there.
Humbug.
And you have to go where they are if you are to do anything with them.
Humbug.
Thank you. So, immigrants and working class people were forced to vote for Tammany. They were intimidated, they were threatened. The police would literally drag them to the polls, watch them vote, and then watch them place it in this clear ballot box, which, fun fact, yeah, total boo. You can actually see this at the Museum of the City of New York, which is very fun. But they would even drag the immigrants to the barber shop so they could get their beards trimmed up and their mustaches removed so they could vote several times under these new disguises.
Vote early, vote often.
Exactly. I don't care how you vote as long as you do it once. No. And so with all of this voter fraud and election tampering, Tammany ascended into high offices across the city and the state. They were in Congress. They were in the state legislature. They were in city council. They were the governor. They were the mayor. They were across the board. And so this power gave them the authority to recalibrate how city decisions were made. And so they rewrote the state constitution, they rewrote our election law, and they rewrote the city charter. So all decisions would flow through the hands of Tammany Hall, and they pretty much had control over everything. And they loved to flex this power. As we can see from, there we go, the Tweed Courthouse. This still stands. It is a beautiful building. It's next to City Hall in Lower Manhattan. You can go see it today. But on July 29th, 1871, the New York Times broke a story that would erupt into the biggest corruption scandal of United States history. Well,
So far.
so far, there's plenty of time.
Tons of chance.
But this building was just a little bit over budget. So,
Little.
as you can see from this extremely realistic picture, they went a little bit over the top. And I guess that includes bringing the Statue of Liberty literally on the island of Manhattan. But the invoices showed they purchased enough carpet to cover City Hall Park 3 times. They bought so many brooms, it was more than the original budget of the entire building. They bought enough chairs that if you lined them up next to each other, it would span 17 miles. Science!
Try to clean up this city.
And this is super scientific picture.
Science.
Oh, it's fun going with ChatGPT for this one. Yeah, it's kind of a map. I should have put a ship in there. But anyway. Thank you. Thank you for the pretend ship. Okay. So at the end of the day, this building cost the taxpayers, in today's money, $3.3 billion. That is more than the United States Capitol building that was built on around this same time. And I'm sure...
Yeah, but it's New York.
High cost of living, baby. And I'm sure it's going to surprise you that later it was found out that Tammany Hall was skimming 65% of profits at the top of each invoice. Oh my God! The humbug of it all!
But the brooms!
But the brooms! It was so clean.
Miles of chairs.
Why do you need brooms with carpet?
Great question. Call him up and ask him. But so after the story broke, a lot of Tammany people went to jail. But, yeah, they actually did. I could go into hours of that, but I won't. But they still had a stronghold on the city. But in 1894, State Senator Clarence Lexo created a committee to investigate Tammany Hall's election tampering.
There, consequences.
Consequences! And so this was right on the heels of Tammany stealing the New York State Senate so they could ram through more laws and election laws that would give them power indefinitely. And I talked about that last time I was here. Ask me later about it. But Lexo and his colleagues, they were stalled, they were threatened along the way. But the findings blew people's minds, especially as the investigation gravitated towards the inner machinations of the police department, which served as a critical lever to the Tammany machine. The governor at the time, who was a Tammany guy, said this investigation was a misuse of public money of the manufacturing of political capital. Again, I want you to call out when you hear humbug. Thanks. So this investigation found that the police would endorse criminal behavior and turn for profits that flowed back to Tammany.
Not the police!
Not the police! But when people didn't pay, there were consequences. One witness was renting a home from a Tammany guy. The police showed up to collect the extremely increased rent, couldn't pay, they brought him to jail. And he stayed there for a very long time. Another witness, a national celebrity, he had a nightclub, and he would pay off the police so his customers could, engage in some light prostitution. And so, light prostitution. But so after one night, he refused to pay for the police officer's bar tab as they were just hanging around there. And then Tammany, and this includes the mayor, shut down the nightclub, blacklisted him, ran him out of town, and ruined his national reputation. Not the mayor. And so there was another witness, and he said, unlike any other city I know, the entire business thrived under police protection. And this guy, he knew a lot of cities because he was a professional thief. And so during his tenure in New York City, he was on one of hundreds of henchmen under the police chiefs that would use schemes to rip off tourists and greedy countrymen. Humbug! And he told the committee that in today's money, they were making $300,000 a day. A day. But so when the state legislature released the final report, it made national headlines. My favorite was what the LA Times said. There is no difficulty about reforming politics if citizens only make up their minds that they must be reformed. And so I'd like to let that sink in for a minute. Because soon after, 40 police officers faced indictments on bribery, extortion, and neglect of duty. But most important, to me at least, voters showed up. Voters showed up at 88% turnout. And look, civic engagement back then was pretty great, which blows my mind in general, but this was unprecedented. And they voted Tammany out of power. The machine in charge of everything, elections, decisions, they got voted out by the people. Democracy! And I won't lie to you, for the sake of the story, Tammany still endured for a long time after that. Some say the 1960s. I'm going to leave it up to you to determine if they're still around today. But they would never rise to this level of power again. Remember, it can take many swings to fully defeat a monstrous machine.
Good note.
So, yeah, science. So, apologies if I get a little heavy right now, but I was hoping I would be giving this under maybe a little different context. I hope that's vague enough to say, but when I reflect on the precarious state of our fragile democracy, I can't help but feel a sense of darkness. This is an institution that I am obsessed with. An institution that has prevailed for nearly 250 years, curated by a group of revolutionaries and 22-year-olds who envisioned a country where their citizens could participate and have a voice in their government. And yes, we love democracy. But in some of these dark moments of mine, I have even wondered if the sun has set on this quest of mine to improve our democracy. But then I remember this other obsession of mine. Taylor Swift endorsing 400,000 voters. I knew she would be relevant. But no, I mean my obsession with Tammany Hall. And I know I can hear you say, Andrea, that sounds a little bit like a contradiction. How could these corrupt humbug people make you have hope and encouragement in our democracy?
Humbug.
That's not a lie. But I want you to remember, in this election, we were not dragged to the polls. We cast our ballot in secrecy. We were not beaten for voting a certain way. And as I alluded to, I hope all of you only voted once. And I thought about this the other day, on Election Day, when my dear friend, a new United States citizen, let me go with her to vote for the first time. Hey! I wish she was here so we could cheers to her. But she worked so hard for this for nearly a decade, and she overcame such obstacles. And there she was, voting with her own free will for who she wanted to. And I wish I could show the video of us celebrating, but I know I am already like way over time, but you know.
We were warned.
And I'm almost done, I promise. But I don't know what is in store for the future. But I do know when we look at the past, we see that citizens demanded back their democracy from Tammany. They took the information given by brave public servants and they showed up. And it took time, but the point I'm trying to make here is that since we have created protections and systems in spite and because of Tammany Hall's election tampering, remember what the LA Times said. There is no difficulty about reforming politics if citizens only make up their minds that they must be reformed. So, I'm not going to be the person to say, keep fighting, keep doing whatever. I am going to ask you for one thing, though, and that is to please keep voting. In every single election, and I will beat this drum until I'm dead. Only 26% of New Yorkers showed up and turned out in the 2021 mayoral primary, and that broke records of modern history. That is very different from 88%. So, I have a to-do list for you. Step 1, register to vote. Step 2, and I hope this QR code works, but it's a calendar invite to remind you to make a plan for the next big New York City election. That is June 2025. It is the mayoral primary, and I really need you all to show up. Please. And I will ask each of you if you voted in it.
If you're not scanning now, it's just vote.nyc.
Yeah, that works. And you can do the calendar invite on your own, too. But I will be checking homework. But so before I go and I get out of your hair, I just want to leave you with my favorite poet, Amanda Gorman, who said, while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. All right. So tonight, let's raise a glass to the resistors, the reformers, and the revolutionaries, also lovingly known as the voters. Cheers. Thank you.